Hello and welcome. Today we are going to start a new series on Let's Learn Flutter. Well, if you are already here, that would mean that you already know what Flutter is. And so I am not going to spend a lot of time talking about what actually is Flutter. I'm not here to argue about why should you use Flutter. I'm only here to teach and how to learn Flutter. That's the goal of this series of presentations. If you're looking for a forum for debate, why should you or why you should not use Flutter, then this may not be the right place for you. There are plenty of videos, there are plenty of blogs that may be talking about pros and cons, about Flutter, React, and Angular, and other platforms for building the cross-platform applications. But this series is purely about learning Flutter by example. So let's dive right into it. For sake of completion, I will just talk for a few minutes. What exactly is Flutter? Flutter is just a UI development platform that is built by the Google development team. As simple as that. And along the way, Flutter, it is based on a programming language called Dart, again, given to you by Google team. So that is a very simple kind of introduction to Flutter. If you are very interested in knowing more about the history, more details about Flutter, you can go to flutter.dev. It will tell you all about it. Along the way, I will also be discussing about Dart. So I'm not going to have a separate presentation or a separate series on learning Dart. We will learn it along the way. So here is a simple thing. Flutter is a UI toolkit which uses Dart as a programming language. Why Flutter? This is not to tell you why you should be using Flutter, or this is not a debate like I earlier said. Here are my reasons why I use Flutter. And there seems to be very logical reasons. One, it is a native compilation for web, mobile, and desktop. What that means is that when you compile your Flutter project, it automatically compiles into the native code for it. Single code base. Who wants to have multiple code bases? If I am building an application for web, if I am building the same application for the mobile app, if I am building the same application for desktop, I don't want to have three separate code bases. The code that I want to write for one platform, I want to use the same code for all the platforms. That is what Flutter gives you. Single code base. The next thing always is, how does it perform? In the past, I have used some platforms when their performance just sucks. When it comes to a native compilation, especially on mobile, and I will not name those platforms, I have talked to the development teams for those, and they have admitted that yes, sometimes depending on what you are doing, the performance is not as you expect. The platform may be okay for some simple UI. The platform may be okay for some very simple forms-based application, but when it comes to building some more realistic kind of that requires some heavyweight lifting, then those platforms didn't work for me. And based on what I've used, what I have done in Flutter, I'm happy with performance. I will not say it is 100% native, but it comes very, very close to the native performance. Well, let's get started. Always starting off any new platform is that you have to install it. Best thing is you can go to flutter.dev and they give you all the installation instructions. Best part, it installs on all the platforms. It's installed on Mac, installed on Windows, installed on Chrome OS, installed on Linux. But it just works. The installation Trust me, I have installed on at least 2 platforms. I use it on my MacBook, I use it on my Windows machine. It just works. As I mentioned at the very start, for Flutter, the language is Dart. Depending on the version of Flutter you are using, you have to match it with version of Dart as well. Because there are some features that are introduced in Dart that may not be compatible with version of Flutter that you may be using. So version of Dart has to match with Flutter. So I will say you have an option of installing Dart separately, but the best thing to do is when you install Flutter, Dart gets installed with it. Once you have installed, the next thing is, how do I want to write the code? What is going to be my editor for my code? So from the documentation, you will find that Google gives you instructions on using Android Studio, but you are not limited to using Android Studio. You can use Visual Studio Code. That is what I use. Or you can use IntelliJ. All of them work fine. There is no right or wrong in choosing which editor you are using. I use Visual Studio Code for my reasons. If you don't like Visual Studio Code, you're free to use Android Studio, IntelliJ, or any other editor that can provide you a plugin for Flutter. So that is a very brief introduction on how are you going to get started. Install on any operating system. Install Flutter, you will get the right version of Dart with it, and then you install your code editor. Well, now that you have installed Flutter, you have installed your editor of choice. So throughout this series, I am going to use a project that I am working on. So what I'm presenting is what I am working on at the moment. I am building a cryptocurrency price monitoring application. So I will build along with you. The key concepts will be we will see how you lay out your application, how you set up navigation, because there are some basic principles, very basic things that you will need for any kind of application. Doesn't matter. Is it a web application? Is it a desktop application? Or is it a mobile application? Some basic principles. You need to have a good layout, which is very clean and very intuitive for the user. You have to have navigation, because unless you have an application that can cover everything on one view or one page, you probably won't need navigation. But it's very hard to imagine. When we say navigation just simply doesn't mean from page to page. Navigation could mean also that you're navigating from one view to the other, even maybe on the same page. So how are we going to set the navigation? During that, we will talk how the navigation framework works in Flutter. A lot of applications, they do have a concept of authentication and authorization, especially if you are building an application that does require a user to log in. That means you have to have some authentication and authorization mechanism set up. Next thing is you will be getting data to display for your application. So we will be seeing how we fetch this data asynchronously. If you have the data, then you're going to see how you consume it. And once you have consumed the data, you're going to be reflecting the updated data in your views. So we will see how the views get updated. Once your application is complete, you want to publish it to an app store so you can give it to other users for use. So during this exercise, we will see how do you prepare your application to publish on Google and Apple app stores. And at the end, we will see how do you publish this application. So let's get started. I already have my Visual Studio Code editor open, so you start it. One of the things that you will have to do before you get anything started with Flutter is that do check that you do have the Dart and Flutter extensions installed on Visual Studio Code. If you don't have it, or if you want to check do you have it or not, you can just go to this extension icon, look at the list of the installed ones, and if you don't have it, then just search for Flutter and Dart and do install it. Once you have it, you have all the things that you will need. You can install other extensions as needed, but that is the bare minimum you will need. So we're going to get started. So how do we do it? You're going to go to View, type Command Palette. Few things you will notice in my recently used one is, since I've been using it, they're already in my recently used. You do want to run Flutter Dart. You will find that in Google's instructions also that you should run it, because what it will do is it will check your dev environment to make sure that you have all the components that you will need. For example, if you don't have a Android API already installed on your machine, it will find it. And if there's any other required components, Flutter Dart will find it and show you in the panel, and then just follow the instructions and complete all the components that will be required. So let's get started. So you're gonna say Flutter new application project. Pick the folder where you want to install it. So what I'm gonna do is, I already have my little folder where I put all my mobile apps. So I'm just gonna select the project. Now you're gonna have to name your project. When I come back, I'm gonna go back to my crypto_monitor project, but just to show you what you can do is you will be naming it. One of the things that will be enforced by the editor is that it wants you to name your project with only in the lowercase. It will not take a camel case, it will not take uppercase. So we're just gonna call it Hello World, and there we go. As you can see, it is the progress. It is bringing in all the files that I need. So you can see that it has created a pretty decent amount of files and the environment that I will need to get started. So you can see Android support is already there. iOS support is there. Under the lib folder, you will find the main file that it has created. Since we are starting from scratch, the best thing that I've always find is that just delete everything that the template has given you and learn from scratch. So one of the things that you will find in Flutter, everything is widgets, and widgets. And you can see that the start of the application is the main function. Here is your main function, and inside there is one method called run app. As you can see, inside run app, it is creating an instance of my app. And if you look at it, my app is extending stateless widget. That means that even a application is a widget. So that is what this whole world of Flutter is all about. Widgets, and widget. And it's all about how you place your widgets. It's a kind of Legos. And how do you pack all these widgets inside each of the widgets to just set up your layout. And that is what this thing will do. So what I did was, for my project, so you can see it created a lot of code with a lot of instructions. So do take some time, read what the boilerplate template has given you. It's a nice kind of instructions you get. So I'm gonna close this window and get back to our project. So what I have is, my project is called crypto_monitor. Well, here we go. Inside lib, I have started creating some structure, but here's the starting point of the application. You will have the main function. Inside you have the run app, like I mentioned earlier. So I call my application class name is currency monitor app, and it extends stateless widget. So there are two types of widgets. One is stateless, one is stateful. So stateless widget, since you've been doing development for quite a while, you understand what stateless means something that really does not have any state that it has to carry. It's more like a static application, static content. Once you have built it, you are never going to change. It does not react to any kind of changes that happen to data. So it's very hard to imagine that you will have a stateless widget or a stateless application. So, but Since we are getting started, we will simply just keep our concept simple, that we are starting with a app which is completely stateless. Any app, it has three things. It has a little title bar at the top, then it has a little body, and then it has a little bar at the bottom, like any other mobile app. So in this, we're gonna set up our base application, which is gonna have a application bar. It's gonna have a navigation bar at the bottom, and it has body. We have to give a title. So you can see we have our currency monitor app, which is extending the stateless widget. Every widget, every class that overrides, which extends from widget, it has to override the build function. This is the function that gets called by the rendering engine. This is the function that is responsible for providing the elements that need to be put on the view. So you will always be writing this method. If you don't write it, if you don't provide this build method, you will have errors. The application will not even let you compile it. So we will talk about different kinds of app, but for sake of simplicity, we will start that we will use a material app. Material app gives you a lot of inbuilt features of the material design. So first thing first, you have to give a title, because this is the title that is going to show up on your device as the name of your application. So I just called it currency monitor. Next thing you see is theme. This is the theme that you are giving to your application, that unless otherwise you specify a explicit, let's say a background color, a scheme for your theme. If you want your application to have a default, then this is the place where you will set it up. So this is the theme where I said my primary swatch is a green color. That would mean that if I don't provide any kind of background to the elements that do require a background or will need a background by design, it will automatically become green. Next thing is home. You will set up home page. As we talk in the subsequent presentations, when I talk about navigation, when I talk about routing, then we may not even be using this home property. There is other properties for navigation that are used, but since we are setting up our base application, I will just simply say I am going to provide an instance of another widget which is called homepage. I'll show you what that widget looks like. So that is all we need. Next thing I said, I have set up a homepage. Here we go. This is homepage. As you can see that since we are just for starting as a simple application, we are starting with a stateless application. Homepage is another widget, which is a stateless widget. Again, as I said, any widget, they have to provide a build method. So it is providing a build method. Simple. It's a page, and page has a child. It has children in there. I said you can just cover this whole page with a scaffold, and inside the scaffold you have the app bar, which is the top bar of your application. Here is the beautiful part about using Flutter, is that Flutter team has already provided a lot of widgets out of the box. It already has the app bar. I have set up the app bar and given a title, which is going to be home. So these titles don't have to be static, but they can be dynamic depending on the context of your page. But for now, we are keeping it simple, that the title that is going to show up on the home page is just simply say home. Then I have set up the bottom navigator, that for now I'm just say I have two pages. I have home and contact us. So one other thing is that when you create a bottom navigator, it is a collection of the bottom navigator bar items. Again, Flutter has provided all the widgets that you will need out of the box for most of the things that you will be doing. A bottom navigator has to have at least two, because unless you have more than one pages to navigate to, there is no need for a navigation bar also. And each of these bottom navigator bar items require two properties to be provided. One is the icon, because and the second one is a label that has to be shown. Depending on the device that you have, it may only be showing icons, and if you have a bigger device like iPad, it may be showing icon and the label with it, and that is it. The next thing we have is, now that we have set up the top bar, which is called the app bar, and the bottom navigator bar, next is just the body. For now, I'm just keeping it simple. All I'm just going to show is the text in the center of the body. So as you can see, even center is a widget, and inside the center, a text is also a widget. That is all that we have to do to set up a basic Flutter application. And let's run the app. It's a very simple app. So here at the bottom, you can see the device that you want to run this app on. By default, in my machine, it is set to Chrome browser. So we're gonna say run, start debugging. So it's gonna launch the application. It's waiting. Here we go. You have the application. On my machine, a lot of things were already set up. So if you're doing this for the first time, it may take a few seconds, maybe a minute, sometime to get all the environment set up for debugging. And you can see we set the theme to be green, so my bar is green. The home page has the text that I wanted. Bottom navigation have 2 icons, and that's all I need. Once you have it up and running, you will not have to restart your debugging. Best thing about Flutter is that it can do a hot reload. You will make a change to the application and it will just refresh once you will say just update the view. So this was how it looked like in the web. At the very start, I said it's a single code base which compiles to all the devices natively. Let's close this. Now what we're gonna say is that, you know what, I already have my emulator started for Pixel. What I'm gonna do is, at the bottom of this Visual Studio Code, I'm gonna switch from Chrome to Pixel phone, and then I'm gonna say, let's see how it looks like in the Pixel phone. So here is the Pixel phone's emulator already started. As you can see that the Gradle is running. It is putting together all the package it needs to run on the phone, and it will just launch on the phone emulator. Now you can see the view on the Pixel phone emulator. It looks exactly like what we had on the browser itself. There is no difference in the view. It has everything that we needed. Earlier I mentioned that you can do a hot reload. So let's see if it works. So I'm gonna say that my colors is blue. And as soon as I am gonna save the application, you can see it is doing a hot reload. There we go. Without doing any recompilation, Flutter updated my view with the changes that I needed. So that is the hot reload that happens in Flutter. That's all that we have for this session of our first presentation on learning Flutter. So in the subsequent presentation, I will talk more about the other topics, so that's all we have. So I hope this was useful for you to get started with learning Flutter. Do subscribe to the channel so I can keep you updated with the latest updates that happen. And thank you for watching. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.